In today's world, it is easy to view societal issues in black and white. However, it is in the gray area where the most truth is sometimes found. I'm Nina, and in this YouTube mini-series, I will be delving into the complex issue of technology and how it impacts our relationships with ourselves and others. Do any of our problems we face on a day-to-day basis have something to do with this new digital age, when access to anything we want is at our fingertips? Through this video, I hope to raise awareness about our relationships with technology and analyze it in a society that has rendered it a deeply rooted habit. In order to create a more realistic set of solutions to issues, this series will comprehensively acknowledge both the positive impacts as well as aspects of technological hygiene that we should be more wary of on a day-to-day basis. So I will acknowledge the positive impacts that technology has, because obviously there are many, but I will also discuss how the development of technology is getting kind of scary and how there are some negative aspects to our humanity. So I basically sent out a survey to the student body and my teachers, and 19.4% adults responded and 80.6% of students responded. The different areas are teenager / young adult and adult. In this video, in this specific video, I will just be talking about how technology, specifically mobile phones, impacts your productivity and focus while trying to complete a task, the extent of how it impacts your social interaction and ability to communicate with others, if you give up more easily on schoolwork tasks with the availability of the internet, and the extent to which it has impacted our attention spans. For the first question, to what extent do you believe your mobile phone impacts your productivity and focus while trying to complete a task? 1 was no impact, and then 5 was strongly impacts. 0% said no impact. 2, 13.9%. 3, 27.8%. 4, 33.3%. And 5, 25%. For this, most people decided that it moderately impacts and kind of strongly impacts their productivity and focus. So it can be seen that there is an effect through this data, at least what the teachers and students reported. In a world so focused on tangible output and progress, it is ironic that the average American checks their phones 96 times per day, once every 12 minutes. As many of you know, the action of picking up your phone is a practiced, unconscious habit, so it is no wonder the majority of those surveyed acknowledge that technology does impact their focus. What are some of the positive impacts that technology can have? Instead of spending hours looking through definitions in books, struggling to understand complex passages of text, sending letters to friends, colleagues, and bosses, and scheduling meeting times where everyone can physically make it, technology expedites and therefore increases productivity in this arena. There are many, many ways in which technology does improve productivity and it does improve focus, because you're able to do more of the things that matter and less of like the logistical things and waiting for letters to get to someone, etc. One of the negative impacts I feel is we generally spend less time thinking about what we write because it's so easy to, and we also may spend less time thinking about what words mean and the exercise of sifting through the pages of a physical book, like a thesaurus, carefully crafting your words in a letter rather than in personal emails. And we might expect that fast-paced level, to be existent in every aspect of our lives. And therefore, when things take longer, when things don't take as fast as you want it to, that's when our focus depletes, because we're so used to everything happening within a split second. And on the level of personal work and projects, there's often a decline in the ability to produce quality work due to the expectancy of fast and quick results. There was once a time, not too long ago, that computers took like 4 to 5 minutes every time you wanted to turn it on. And now people get anxious if it isn't instant. This ties into the feelings of anxiety that one may experience when a certain task takes longer than expected, causing impatience when things don't go as planned. and increasing rates of like fatigue and burnout due to due to the unfamiliarity of the brain to of focusing on one task and it taking a while. We're not used to things taking a while. We're used to things taking a short amount of time with technology. Obviously, it's not all the time. It's not for everyone. Some people are like, really good at focus, but just in the general majority, technology I feel is causing people to have that expectancy of fastness. What can we do to remedy this? Our relationship with technology can be monitored and self regulated through staying cognizant of the time we spend on tasks that are important to us and tasks that we would kind of not have liked to have done. Some of these things may result in an eye roll, but I think they're the most basic steps to gaining more independence and control of your focus and productivity. I say silence group chats and chats in general. It's a toughie, but you have to know when to set your own limits in order to get done what you need to get done. As someone who has attempted to increase social interaction and emotional bonds with people, it can definitely feel like you're missing out and people kind of think you're like ghosting or that you're antisocial. But things weren't always like this. There was a time when you weren't able to contact your friends by the pressing of a little screen and sending it. You had to make plans to go out with them or call them on the telephone. Sadly, today, one thing I've one thing I like I'm kind of sad about is the fact that there's no such thing as solitude anymore because in such an interconnected world with phones and like most people they have their computers, they have their phones in their room. So even when you're in your room alone, you're not really alone. And that's what is kind of scary. And that's why we can try to generate our own kind of solitude. That's why people go on like phone like detoxes and stuff like that. But I think it's just about, I don't know, we need to be cognizant of how much of our lives are connected to our technology. I never used to delete emails. I never thought it was important when I was younger because I was like, okay, there's like infinite space or whatever, right? Emails are stupid. And it wasn't until this year where I actually had like, well, not this year, like last year in high school, where I actually had to like start using it for important things. And the fact that it is freaking full that I have to delete them. And I know I don't have this issue because emails are just there and I don't really get distracted by them. They are kind of annoying when they just pop up on my screen. But in the end, I would say to lessen the overwhelm of that, have a set time for deleting your emails. Like oh, don't feel like you have to do it randomly in the day. I feel like if you have a set time for deleting emails, that'll lessen the amount that your productivity and focus is impacted by those incoming emails. Because we feel like we're being reached out to, and then we need to get back right away. And that probably is a cause of like today's ADHD and anxiety. I'm not a licensed anything. I'm in high school, but just by literal observation of people and observing, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to feel alone when you're never alone, and that could definitely impact our focus, definitely impact our productivity because there's always so much to do and yet we're always bored. I don't know. Okay, let's move on. I'm also doing this with like a sore throat, so oh my god. Have goals, trust your gut, and embrace the uncomfortable. The morning of, or even better the night before, set goals for your work in small chunks throughout the day and take breaks in which you can use your phone. This is hard. I like people say advice for dealing with phone addiction, but it's much harder when you have to put it into practice. If your phone or email is always accessible, then what is to stop you from picking it up the second your work gets the slightest bit boring? I know there are so many other videos on YouTube that say this exact same thing. So, but why is it so hard to put into practice? It's because, I mean, it's made to be addicting. It's made to draw you in. And also, when people don't feel productive, when people don't feel motivated, there's a whole wealth of hustle culture media where it's like, now that I think about it though, that might be there because I watch videos like that and I'm recommended stuff like that. Like my entire YouTube page right now is productivity stuff and setting goals for the new year. Anyways, from my experience, I had a time where whenever I didn't have motivation or I was like struggling with a certain area of my life, I would look up on YouTube how to blah 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 blah, things to do to blah blah blah, habits to blah 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 blah. And I feel like that resulted in just like an endless cycle of doing nothing. Because when you don't feel productive, then you watch a productivity video, you get like this hit of motivation and the feeling that you are doing something good with your life, and then you might do a little work or whatever. But in the end, you didn't really do anything. You didn't go through the feeling of uncomfortableness yourself. You used I used to use YouTube as a safety blanket, as a like a comfort blanket for feeling like I was getting something done. In reality, maybe I should have just sat with my emotions of and generated my own solutions to my problems instead of relying on the internet. We'll get to that later though. That being said, in regulating our interaction with technology, we should trust oh yeah, okay. We should trust what has worked for us and learn from our past mistakes and use self reflection as a way of personal improvement instead of simply what the internet tells you to do. And oftentimes, that the internet video tells you what you already know is like, oh, healthy habits, drink water, eat, whole fruits and vegetables or whatever. But like you know, like why are you searching up more things to do that are like healthy habits when you should just do the stuff you already know how to do and you're just confirming it and making yourself feel better through looking it up. I feel like there's just like an addiction to looking things up nowadays when that takes away our own creativity, our own ability to, you know, in short, in order to gain more independence in terms of productivity and technology, we should be wary of our goals, our intuition, and outcomes, and embrace the feeling of dread that sometimes comes with projects that require like deep thinking and time, and get more used to that stage of deep thinking and uncomfortableness. In the words of a respondent, in which there was an optional free response question in which I asked if they thought if society was regressing or progressing in terms of technology, as well as just a free response. They say, no, I think technology is productive, but we need to regulate it better. Exposure to things for self regulation would make it better. However, that is impossible to regulate. Yeah, it's technology has its positives. We just need to get more control over it, which is the hard thing. Okay, moving on to the second question. This is about our quality of social interaction and ability to communicate with others. There were 36 responses for this, and there were 36 responses for the other one as well. But I think I like this chill vibe of talking about this because it is a conversation. It's just a conversation based on some responding to questions I asked. Also, feel free to like comment anything you want about anything discussed here. As we say, gray area. It's where most truth is found. Sometimes I say sometimes because that's gray area in itself. You feel me? Okay. Because specifically stating that statement that the gray area is where the most truth is found, is that a black and white statement in itself? So that's why I had to add this sometimes. I'm getting too deep about this, maybe. Anyways, okay. So this is to what extent do you believe your phone impacts your quality of social interaction and or ability to communicate with others. 8.3 said does not impact. 22.2 were 2. 38.9 were neutral. 13.9 4. And 16.7 were heavily. So it's very neutral with this, which is interesting because most people it's varied. So that means it is different from person to person, and most people said it neutrally impacts your quality of social interaction. So this shows like there's some impact, but not people are not responding that there's such an intense impact on their social interaction. Then again, this was not a perfect way to get this information because this is like a mixture of some adults and mostly students. And students, my generation, I wouldn't be able to fully compare how I fully know how technology's impacted our lives because we've grown up with it. So that's why we need to be wary of the survey. We need to be wary of that in the survey and know that I'm not discounting their opinions at all, no. But it's interesting to see that this was a mostly majority younger population that I surveyed. So if I were to do this again in the future, maybe I think no, you definitely have to make different groups and survey those different groups because you can't meld them all into one because people have different life circumstances of living with technology. Like for me, I specifically remember times. Anyways, okay, I'm getting off topic.
Social prowess and ability to communicate is quite ironic when it comes to discussing technology because technology increases the ability to connect with people, and inherently wouldn't that be seen as like improving your quality of social interaction because you can do it more? But that begs the question, quality over quantity. We have the ability to communicate so much, but what is the quality of that communication? And so we'll get into that later. There are definitely a lot of positive impacts that technology has on quality of social interaction. One survey respondent said that technology allows people to connect more easily and more often. This can lead to the quick formation and easy maintenance of relationships, as you do not have to wait to see another person to talk to them, and plus you can learn more about them through what they post on social media. However, any relationship can be streamlined through technology, including shallow ones. People can now stalk each other into more thorough and anonymous degrees. Anonymity generally makes people more bold to do things they wouldn't do to someone's face, which is a quality that has proven potential for negative impact. But neither of these actions are technically new with the rise of technology, they just become more commonplace. Setting certain boundaries between yourself and technology can allow you to minimize any negative impacts, but most people unfortunately learn to do this the hard way. So yeah, this person is taking into account multiple aspects of this issue, and it definitely while you do have the ability to connect to more people, the quality of that interaction is hindered by technology because now you don't have to really form a connection with them consciously. You don't have to go out of your way to talk to them to form a connection. You can even like meet people and like see what people's lives are like through social media and through what they post, and that leads to like that could lead, I think, to like not having to ask questions about their life, which might lead to even more conversation. It's hard to self-regulate when yeah, like this has happened in the past where people be the ability to be anonymous is the ability to be anonymous. Yeah, it's something that it's kind of new. Okay. In addition, someone else responded saying that I do not miss a less technology-based society. I think the availability of information is a good thing, and the internet allows us to be more connected to each other all the time. Even 3 decades ago, it would be nearly impossible to keep close contact with someone even a state or two away. With technology, I can interact with my family who lives in Pennsylvania or Virginia, or even friends on the other side of the world. It can also be easier to communicate using the internet. Face-to-face communication can be overwhelming, especially for someone who might not catch social cues. But before the internet, this overwhelm still happened, but there were no tools to assist people in this circumstance. I don't miss a time without technology because I can experience a time without technology just by going on a walk or a hike, or so much as turning off my phone for a while and reading a book. Technology may be pervasive, but I believe that it is ultimately a progressive and positive change. In some ways, in many ways, technology does help people who struggle with face to face communication and allow them to connect with people and away through talking because talking is hard. Communication is a difficult thing to do. So having the internet there to help you is it does have a positive benefit. However, however, I agree with this. As in this discussion of analyzing our relationships with technology, one must take into account different personalities and innate social abilities in order to properly equate technology as being the cause of any harm to social ability. As someone responded in the survey, yes, I do long for such a time. I love sometimes traveling or being in school because my reception is so poor I can't check my phone. Life is definitely regressing as people feel more comfortable with their phones rather than with human interactions. I am another person. Okay. Yes. People generally, instead of looking, people generally are more, people with technology are generally more comfortable having that safety net of their phones to talk, because like say like what like if you have this intriguing thing to do on your phone all the time, then why do you even need, what's the necessity in talking to other people if our boredom is cured by those, by the technology? Like why would you look up, why would you attempt to even make a conversation when you have your phone to occupy yourself? And that's the question. So yes, it can be a way for people to communicate with others who are not good at in-person communication, but at the same time, it can be a way to avoid that human contact. Another person says, I would say that life is regressing in terms of connectivity and relationships with others, as people are usually ingrained in their phones and are more likely to break awkward situations by going on their phone rather than trying to speak. Yes, I agree with this. The phone is something that, yeah, I agree with this. And connect, when trying to connect with someone, there's also so much lost when you're talking. Like, okay, just to like take texting for example. So much is lost when you're texting. Just the physical presence of another being, their facial expressions when they're talking, their gestures, like the tone of their voice, and that's probably also what causes self-esteem issues because texting you, when you don't get an immediate response, or at least in my experience, when I don't get an immediate response, it's like, what are they doing? Like, what are they doing? Do they just not want to respond? Do they not like value my friendship in a way? So it's very interesting to see that habit through texting versus when talking in person, you clearly see their face, their, especially their eyes. You see what's happening, and it's, you lose so much through texting. Okay, another person says, looking back at the days when Gen Z was younger, I often think that the connections we formed were due to a lack of technology. Today, you see children stuck on their iPads or begging for their parents' phone, but none of them have friends that they'll immediately go to during a break or make faces at during class. I believe that technology has much potential to harm as it does to help, and therefore should be regulated. Yeah, and it's definitely starting at a very, very young age. I see little kids and even like tweens who their entire worlds are kind of just on technology, and from a young age they're used to technology just being partially what reality is in a way. In a sense, the availability of having technology there takes away the need to talk to others and interact with others because you always have something to do. Okay. Okay. And there's definitely a decreased, there's less responsibility and accountability that one must take for communication. And you no longer have to provide your full attention to someone because there's an escape route and you have the ability to control whether you respond or not and how long you take to respond, and generally that allows you to keep people right where you want them and not have to share too much, not have to listen to too much. In bite-sized pieces you can hold, you can have friends but you can hold them at a distance and make you feel like you have more control over those friendships. And obviously, this isn't for everyone, but technology gives you that ability. And some people, they, we take it, some people may not even recognize it, that we take advantage of that. And I know I was saying earlier the fact that we should regulate and control when we text, when we communicate with people, because we constantly have the ability to. At the same time, that's like a detriment to our friendships, because think about, like, when you're calling someone. Also, some people nowadays who didn't grow up with calling people are so frightened by the prospect of it, because immediately there's more responsibility that comes with that, because you have to respond right away. You have to be present in your communication. Unlike texting, where you don't have to be present, you can be doing 10 other things and like just respond every now and then. The quality of the interaction also decreases. For example, people send emojis often as a replacement for a meaningful response, and that's changed the way that people communicate in their daily lives. While the way people communicate is has been constantly morphing and changing, and that's like natural. It's a natural progression in life. I sometimes find that I use like emojis as a replacement for words and ideas I don't know how to express. And then when it comes to formal writing, especially like I think in my early freshman years, I've gotten much better at it now, but when I used to text a lot and use emojis, in my formal writing, I wouldn't know what to say. My brain automatically thought, oh, an emoji could go here. Like, I think that just shows how much our lives are impacted by the communication we do on a daily basis, and just how influenced we are by this new culture of texting. I just like the texting culture really fascinates me too. It's something that I'm very interested in. And yeah, as I said before, like by being by being able to see little snippets of people's lives, such as with Be Real, it can decrease your need to go out of your way. And socialization has a middleman now, and that middleman is technology. It's social media. And when you cut out the middleman, you're not used to interacting with that person directly, face to face. And that's why it becomes hard to talk to people. We just have to be wary, you know? Because I know right now it's fine. People can still have the ability to talk to one another, but we just have to be careful about how much we rely on technology to talk, because then where are our communication skills going to go? I don't know. And here's a clip from Sherry Turkle discussing her book Alone Together. I read this book in the summer before my junior year for AP Lang, and I loved it. Like everything that was said in it, I resonated with. And now I'm like looking at her other stuff too. She has a lot of books out, and I want to get into this more because it's very interesting how technology is changing our lives. Okay, now what can we do about this? Can we do about this? Okay, for me, I feel like paying attention to people when they're talking on their phone. So put your phone down, just put it away. I know sometimes you have your phone in your hand when you're talking to people. You might glance at it, and it might be fine for you because we've come to see that as normal. But put it down. Even if you're holding it, a small fraction of you is not present in the conversation. And if you want to be present in your conversations more, put it down. Shut it down. Attempt to make more conversation with people and not use your phone as an escape route. If you are sitting in a room waiting for, let's say, class to start or some other random circumstance, chances are people around you are going to be on their phones. Uh, I say, don't go on your phone and make conversation. Maybe with someone you don't even know, you know? Um, and that statement in itself can be hard. As we said, like people who aren't good at making that conversation, but people have like actual like disorders and problems with communication. The only way you can get better at something is to practice. And what better way to practice than sparking that conversation, talking to people. And that's why it's so hard to give advice on these types of things because everyone is so different and they have to find what works for them in terms of living a life they want to live. Some people are just antisocial and regardless of technology, either way, they just wouldn't want to talk. And it's completely fine. But I'm just saying we have to be wary of how we're letting technology rule our lives and detract from what we really want to do. But if that's the life you want to live, that's okay. It's just being wary. Simply observe on a day-to-day basis whether the prevalence and habits of those around you with phones. I'm extremely wary about this. I notice it a lot how people how phones are changing our communication. One time I downloaded an app that makes you that questions whether you really want to open the app or not. I used it for a little bit and I noticed how we sometimes unconsciously open apps and then scroll without even wanting to. And then we just are in that cycle of scrolling and scrolling, scrolling, and it's hard to break out of the pattern just because some part of our brains craves that sense of scrolling. The dopamine, the serotonin that comes with scrolling, and practice being mindful of those you are talking to and appreciate the little conversations that you have with people throughout the day because those little conversations add up to something greater. They add up to something more. And the only way you find out more about your social habits is by trying and going out of your comfort zone. I'm just gonna say, in sophomore year, I was so focused on my own goals, my own classwork, and it was junior year I realized the connections you form with people are through the little conversations you have with them that add up to something more. Do you give up more easily on schoolwork tasks with the availability of the internet, e.g., looking up an answer before thinking about it? 8.6% said strongly disagree. 20% said 2. 34.3% neutral. 3. 25.7% 4. 11.4% strongly agree. So this was a wide array of responses. It mostly people were neutral and it's kind of even on both sides. So it looks like people acknowledge that there is some sort of impact on their schoolwork, but not too much. Some of the positive impacts. There are many, many positives to the internet in terms of helping you not give up and allowing you to go extra miles, allowing you to work more efficiently, such as something like being on the tip of your tongue and then being able to look it up. And as someone who's personally used the internet for math help, I understand that it is extremely helpful and it is extremely helpful to have a wealth of information at your fingertips and supplement any like outstanding questions that you have about certain things learned. So yeah, it's great to have. Whenever you want to look things up, I say make your own list first and then supplement with additional information from the internet. So, in terms of math, I would say try and stick with the problem for longer before looking up the answer online because then your brain might get used to that thinking stage Might even make problems in the future easier as you get used to reasoning through. In regards to student literacy, I think you should spend more time trying to understand the text without ultimately relying on the internet, because then you are putting more of yourself into the work and increasing your ability to do the work yourself, increasing your own ability and confidence in yourself. Okay, question number 4. To what extent do you believe technology has impacted your attention span? One was technology has strongly impacted my attention span. 5 is technology has no effect on my attention span. 14.3% said technology strongly impacted. 28.6% said 2. 31.4% were neutral at 3. 25.7% were at 4. And 0% were strongly impacted at 5. So, through this data, it is seen people think it does ultimately impact their attention span in some way. Attention span to me is one of the most concerning negative impacts of technology, as I'm exposed to it every day, with people around me engrossed in their phones, scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. And to those surveyed, the free response was also fairly concerned about attention span, as the rise of short form content, i.e., TikTok, Insta Reels, YouTube Shorts, etc., is low key killing all of our minds. If you don't like the content you see, it only takes a second to scroll past it. Don't you think that promotes instant gratification instead of delayed gratification? It makes us impatient, a slave to modern media, and worst of all, our attention span becomes worse than that of a goldfish. No offense to all goldfish. Smiley face. And this observation is correct. As Gloria Mark, PhD in psychology, states in an interview with American Psychological Association, the human attention span has decreased markedly from 2004 to the last 4 or 5 years. Now, this was a study that was done in which attention span has decreased. Technology is seductive. It promises a lot of things. In a world full of chaos, it is a promise that there will always be something to turn to, but it becomes a crutch as well. The second things get hard, the millisecond an assignment is too difficult, our attention is lost. And what was once motivation dissolves into an existential crisis and an inability to push through the boredom. And our phones and technology allow us to escape that feeling. How do we increase our attention spans? How do we get back to that ability to function when there isn't something immediately happening to you, or when you just aren't being overstimulated? Read more, scroll less. You see, like, challenges of people replacing their screen time with reading on YouTube? Possibly. We should all adopt that kind of mindset of taking the time we use for mindless entertainment or things we do when we feel like we're just going through the motions, and replace it with things we've always wanted to do, like write that novel or paint that picture, go on that hike, etc., etc., and generally hold the quality of our lives to a higher standard than what we usually do. We don't take enough initiative for our own happiness, our own satisfaction sometimes, just because there are feelings of achievement and happiness that can simply come from the media we consume. Okay. The Center for Humane Technology also includes that you should spend time outside, try a digital detox, and to understand how social media and generative AI hacks your brain. Some of the links that will be down below for you to check out, and to make sure perhaps we should all learn. This is How to Be Bored by Ava Hoffman, and this entire book is just about hyperactivity in our world. I read it when I was like in grant school, and then I think again in middle school. It's honestly just a bunch of tips on how to live in a world in which technology is so prevalent. Here, I'll read this. In our hyperactive, overstimulated age, Ava Hoffman in How to Be Bored makes a compelling case for cultivating curiosity and self-knowledge, which rely on being unplugged and away from others. Drawing on psychoanalysis, neuroscience, and a wide range of literature, she shows how we can replenish our inner resources in order to restore a sense of depth and meaning to our lives and sense of self. So that's it for video one. Yeah, there's a lot of different aspects to take into account when discussing technology, and I just hope that this helps you become more conscious of how technology impacts your life based on what I think, some little research things, and what people responded. Through this data, it definitely shows that a lot of people do find that technology impacts their lives in some kind of way. You could just as easily, I want to say this, you could just as easily make another survey tailored to the positive impacts of it, and then use that as evidence for a video on how great technology is, which is why I started this video saying that most truth lies in the gray. There are many positive impacts, and there are also things we should be aware of in terms of our own sense of self control. And yeah, I don't want to make this video too long. That's all I wanted to say for this. Okay, sayonara. Thank you for watching, and I hope you check out the links in the description for any website that I mentioned in this video. And I'll also provide a link to Sherry Turkle and her work, as well as Eva Hoffman.